Martial arts are codified systems and traditions of combat practices, which are practiced for a variety of reasons: self-defense, competition, physical health and fitness, entertainment, as well as mental, physical, and spiritual development. Although the term martial art has become associated with the fighting arts of Eastern Asia, it originally referred to the combat systems of Europe as early as the 1550s. The term is derived from Latin, and means arts of Mars, the Roman god of war. Some authors have argued that fighting arts, or fighting systems, would be more appropriate on the basis that many martial arts were never martial, in the sense of being used or created by professional warriors. Variation and scope. Martial arts may be categorized along a variety of criteria, including traditional or historical arts versus contemporary styles of folk wrestling and modern hybrid martial arts. Techniques taught, armed versus unarmed, and within these groups by type of weapon and by type of combat, by application or intent. Self-defense, combat sport, choreography or demonstration of forms, physical fitness, meditation, etc. Within Chinese tradition. External versus internal styles. By technical focus, unarmed martial arts can be broadly grouped into focusing on strikes, those focusing on grappling, and those that cover both fields, often described as hybrid martial arts. Strikes: punching, boxing, Wing Chun, kicking, capoeira, savate, taekwondo. Others using strikes: karate, muay thai, sanshou, grappling, throwing, hapkido, judo, sumo, joint lock, chokeholds, submission holds, aikido, hapkido, jujutsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, sambo, pinning techniques, judo, wrestling. Weapon-based. Those traditional martial arts which train armed combat often encompass a wide spectrum of melee weapons, including bladed weapons and polearms. Such traditions include eskrima, silat, kalaripaya, kobudo, and historical European martial arts, especially those of the German Renaissance. Many Chinese martial arts also feature weapons as part of their curriculum. Sometimes, training with one specific weapon will be considered a style of martial arts in its own right, which is especially the case in Japanese martial arts with disciplines such as kenjutsu and kendo, bojutsu, and kudo. Similarly, modern Western martial arts and sports include modern fencing, stick fighting systems like Canada combat or single stick, and modern competitive archery. By application or intent, combat-oriented, health-oriented. Many martial arts, especially those from Asia, also teach side disciplines which pertain to medicinal practices. This is particularly prevalent in traditional Asian martial arts, which may teach bone setting, herbalism, and other aspects of traditional medicine. Spirituality-oriented martial arts can also be linked with religion and spirituality. Numerous systems are reputed to have been founded, disseminated, or practiced by monks or nuns. Throughout Asia, meditation may be incorporated as part of training. In those countries influenced by Hindu-Buddhist philosophy, the art itself may be used as an aid to attaining enlightenment. Japanese styles, when concerning non-physical qualities of the combat, are often strongly influenced by Mahayana Buddhist philosophy. Concepts like empty mind and beginner's mind are recurrent. Aikido, for instance, can have a strong philosophical belief of the flow of energy and peace fostering, as idealized by its founder Morihei Ueshiba. Traditional Korean martial arts place emphasis on the development of the practitioner's spiritual and philosophical development. A common theme in most Korean styles, such as Taekwon and Taekwondo, is the value of inner peace in a practitioner, which is stressed to be only achieved through individual meditation and training. The Koreans believe that the use of physical force is only justified through defense. Systema draws upon breathing and relaxation techniques, as well as elements of Russian Orthodox thought, to foster self-conscience and calmness, and to benefit the practitioner in different levels. the physical, the psychological and the spiritual. Some martial arts in various cultures can be performed in dance-like settings for various reasons, such as for evoking ferocity in preparation for battle or showing off skill in a more stylized manner. Many such martial arts incorporate music, especially strong percussive rhythms. History. Historical martial arts. The oldest work of art depicting scenes of battle, dating back 3400 BC, was the ancient Egyptian paintings showing some form of struggle. Dating back to 3000 BC in Mesopotamia, reliefs and the poems depicting struggle were found. In Vietnam, drawings and sketches from 2879 BC describe certain ways of combat using sword, stick, bow, and spears. Better source needed. Chinese martial arts originated during the Qia dynasty more than 4,000 years ago. It is said the Yellow Emperor Wang Di introduced the earliest fighting systems to China. The Yellow Emperor is described as a famous general who, before becoming China's leader, wrote lengthy treatises on medicine, astrology and the martial arts. One of his main opponents was Kai Yu, who was credited as the creator of Jiao Dai, a forerunner to the modern art of Chinese wrestling. The foundation of modern Asian martial arts is likely a blend of early Chinese and Indian martial arts. During the Warring States period of Chinese history, extensive development in martial philosophy and strategy emerged, as described by Sun Tzu in The Art of War. Legendary accounts link the origin of Shaolin Quan to the spread of Buddhism from India during the early 5th century AD, with the figure of Bodhidharma to China. In Europe, the earliest sources of martial arts traditions date to ancient Greece. Boxing, wrestling and pankration were represented in the ancient Olympic Games. The Romans produced gladiatorial combat as a public spectacle. A number of historical combat manuals have survived from the European Middle Ages. This includes such styles as sword and shield, two-handed sword fighting and other types of melee weapons besides unarmed combat. Amongst these are transcriptions of the Johannes Lichtenauer's mnemonic poem on the longsword dating back to the late 14th century. Likewise, Asian martial arts become well documented during the medieval period. Japanese martial arts beginning with the establishment of the samurai nobility in the 12th century. Chinese martial arts with Ming-era treatises such as Jiseo Shinshu. Indian martial arts in medieval texts such as the Agni Purana and the Malapurana, and Korean martial arts from the Joseon era and texts such as Muyejibo. European swordsmanship always had a sportive component, but the duel was always a possibility until World War I. Modern sport fencing began developing during the 19th century as the French and Italian military academies began codifying instruction. The Olympic Games led to standard international rules, with the Fédération Internationale d'Escrime founded in 1913. Modern boxing originates with Jack Broughton's rules in the 18th century, and reaches its present form with the Marquis of Queensberry rules of 1867. Europe's colonization of Asian countries also brought about a decline in local martial arts, especially with the introduction of firearms. This can clearly be seen in India after the full establishment of British Raj in the 19th century. Similar phenomena occurred in Southeast Asian colonies such as Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia and the Philippines. Folk styles. Certain traditional combat sports and fighting styles exist all over the world, rooted in local culture and folklore. The most common of these are styles of folk wrestling, some of which have been practiced since antiquity, and are found in the most remote areas. Other examples include forms of stick fighting and boxing. While these arts are based on historical traditions of folklore, they are not historical in the sense that they reconstruct or preserve a historical system from a specific era. They are rather contemporary regional sports that coexist with the modern forms of martial arts sports as they have developed since the 19th century. Often including cross-fertilization between sports and folk styles. Thus, The traditional Thai art of Muay Boran developed into the modern national sport of Muay Thai, which in turn came to be practiced worldwide and contributed significantly to modern hybrid styles like kickboxing and mixed martial arts. Single stick, an English martial art, can be seen often utilized in Morris dancing. Many European dances share elements of martial arts with examples including Ukrainian hopak, Polish zabojniki, the Czech dance odzemek, and the Norwegian hurling. Modern history: late 19th to early 20th century. The mid to late 19th century marks the beginning of the history of martial arts as modern sports, developed out of earlier traditional fighting systems. In Europe, this concerns the developments of boxing and fencing as sports. In Japan, the same period marks the formation of the modern forms of judo, jujutsu, karate, and kendo based on revivals of old schools of Edo period martial arts which had been suppressed during the Meiji Restoration. Modern Muay Thai rules date to the 1920s. In China, the modern history of martial arts begins in the Nanjing decade following the foundation of the Central Guoshu Institute in 1928 under the Kuomintang government. Western interest in Asian martial arts arises towards the end of the 19th century. Due to the increase in trade between the United States with China and Japan, relatively few Westerners actually practice the arts, considering it to be mere performance. Edward William Barton Wright, a railway engineer who had studied jujutsu while working in Japan between 1894 and 1897, was the first man known to have taught Asian martial arts in Europe. He also founded an eclectic style named Batijutsu which combined jujutsu, judo, boxing, savate and stick fighting. Fencing and Greco-Roman wrestling was included in the 1896 Summer Olympics. FILA Wrestling World Championships and boxing at the Summer Olympics were introduced in 1904. The tradition of awarding championship belts in wrestling and boxing can be traced to the Lonsdale belt, introduced in 1909. 20th century, the International Boxing Association was established in 1920. World Fencing Championships have been held since 1921. As Western influence grew in Asia, a greater number of military personnel spent time in China, Japan and South Korea during World War II and the Korean War and were exposed to local fighting styles. Jujutsu, judo and karate first became popular among the mainstream from the 1950s-60s. Due in part to Asian and Hollywood martial arts movies, most modern American martial arts are either Asian-derived or Asian-influenced. The term kickboxing was created by the Japanese boxing promoter Osamu Noguchi for a variant of Muay Thai and karate that he created in the 1950s. American kickboxing was developed in the 1970s, as a combination of boxing and karate. Taekwondo was developed in the context of the Korean War in the 1950s. The later 1960s and 1970s witnessed an increased media interest in Chinese martial arts, influenced by martial artist Bruce Lee. Jeet Kune Do, the system he founded, has its roots in Wing Chun, Western boxing, savate and fencing. Bruce Lee is credited as one of the first instructors to openly teach Chinese martial arts to Westerners. World Judo Championships have been held since 1956. Judo at the Summer Olympics was introduced in 1964. Karate World Championships were introduced in 1970. Following the Kung Fu wave in Hong Kong action cinema in the 1970s, a number of mainstream films produced during the 1980s contributed significantly to the perception of martial arts in Western popular culture. These include The Karate Kid and Bloodsport. This era produced some Hollywood action stars with martial arts background, such as Jean-Claude Van Damme and Chuck Norris. Also during the 20th century, a number of martial arts were adapted for self-defense purposes for military hand-to-hand combat. World War II combatives, KAPAP and Krav Maga in Israel, Systema in Soviet-era Russia, and Sanshao in the People's Republic of China are examples of such systems. The U.S. military emphasized hand-to-hand combat training during the Cold War period, but revived it with the introduction of line in 1989-1990 to present. During the 1990s, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu became popular and proved to be effective in mixed martial arts competitions such as the UFC and Pride. In 1993, the first Pancrase event was held. The K1 rules of kickboxing were introduced based on 1980s Saidokai-kan karate. Jackie Chan and Jet Li are prominent movie figures who have been responsible for promoting Chinese martial arts in recent years. With the continual discovery of more medieval and Renaissance fighting manuals, the practice of historical European martial arts and other Western martial arts are growing in popularity across the United States and Europe. November 29, 2011, UNESCO inscribed Tarekyan onto its Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity list.